My sisters and brothers, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. On that day, as evening drew on, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. A violent squall came up, and waves were breaking over the boat, so that it was already filling up. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased, and there was great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?" They were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this whom even the wind and the sea obeys?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Greetings of peace and goodness to you, my friends. This story about Jesus in the storm is pretty reputable because it's found also in Matthew and in Luke. On the evening of that same day, what day? The gospel is not specific. Only references that it is the day when Jesus, and we all can relate to this, he began to teach by the shores of Lake Gennesareth or the Sea of Galilee. This is the same location. Our story follows the Jesus teaching of the parables about the sower and the lamp under a bowl or a bushel basket and the mustard seed. So we have some context here. He's preaching from the boat. The people are on the shore. Preaching from the boat allows him to have a rather easy exit. And he says to his disciples, "Let's go to the other shore." And in the crossing of the Sea of Galilee, a storm arises. So that's where we pick up our reflection. A storm arises. We're familiar with storms, aren't we? They occur in every single one of our lives. Sometimes they may be, unfortunately, daily. Sometimes less often. But we can resonate with that concept of being confronted by disturbances, events that shake and perhaps even shatter our calm. Life can be sailing along with some relative peace and contentment, and then all of a sudden we're hit broadside with an event that rattles and shakes our security. It can be something temporary or something more permanent. We don't know the length of time. All we know is that we are brought to our knees and we storm heaven with our prayers. Well, once there was a married couple who had endured relative peace and equilibrium during their 60 years of married life. Present company excluded. We have someone celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. They had no secrets from one another, except one secret. The wife kept a shoebox in her closet that she forbid her husband from ever opening. But one evening, as they were romancing and reminiscing about the sweetness of their lives together, she relented, and she allowed him to view the contents of the box. So when the husband went with her blessing to open the box, he found one crocheted doll and $95,000 in cash. "What's this?" he said. She told him, "That's the secret to a happy marriage." Granted, finding $95,000 in cash can make you very happy. But what's with this crocheted doll? Well, she says, when we were first married, my mother told me that the secret to a happy marriage was never to argue. My mother said, instead of arguing, keep quiet and crochet a doll. So that's what I did. Well, there was only one doll in the box. So that must mean that she had been angry with him in those 60 years only one time. He said to her, "But what about all this money?" "Oh," she said, "that's the money I got from selling the other dolls." That was how she coped with the storms in her married life. Jesus confronted the storm. He rebuked it. Rebuked it. It means he scolded the storm. How dare you? He faced it. He went through it, and he was not overwhelmed by it. But instead, he calmed it and those about him. So what about the storms that we all have to face in our lives? It's easy to delude ourselves into thinking that we have a strong faith because everything is going smooth, the world is calm. It's only when a storm strikes that we discover the kind of faith that we really have. Or, if we have any faith at all, faith here means not so much belief in God as trust in God. Some people think that if God was with them and if he really cared about them, well, no storm would ever confront them. Life would be all plain and smooth sailing. But when the storm comes, and invariably it will, they immediately think that God has abandoned them. But in today's gospel, it shows us that that is not so. The storm still hit the boat with the apostles, even though Jesus was present with them in the boat. The people of Charleston, South Carolina, know about sudden storms. Just this past week, I'm sure, as you all know, a tragedy struck at the Emmanuel AME Church, when after a Bible study class, the stranger who was welcomed by the members stood up and massacred 9 of them. The police said it was a hate crime committed by a young 21-year-old racist who wanted to start another civil war. Only 3 survived. Yes, these people know about storms, sudden, violent storms that result in tragic loss of lives. And while our hearts shatter in the shock and sympathy for their suffering, we also gasp in amazement at their resolve not to be overcome, but instead to overcome hatred with love. In spite of their grief and understandable anger, the families of the victim forgave the killer as one by one each confronted him on the occasion of the arraignment, not only to forgive him, but also to pray for mercy for his soul. How could they do this? It is their faith that allowed them. It is their faith that directed them. It is their faith that encouraged them, not only to forgive, but also to pray for mercy upon the one who was the cause of so much agony. They knew what Jesus was for those apostles in the boat. They knew that Jesus is in the boat with them in this storm. And they are resolute in not allowing hatred to overcome them. And the response to the storm, there is a great lesson for us. These compassionate Christians, these icons for us, they're examples for us when we harbor or hang on to resentment towards someone who has done or may have caused so much less hurt or harm in our lives. If they can forgive and pray for someone who has hurt them so monumentally, why can't we? What a real faith does is assure us that God is with us in the midst of the storm. It is the conviction that we are not alone, which enables us also to get through the storm. When the storm suddenly hit the apostles, what happened? Their faith failed them, and they were overcome with fear. And we can deduce this from what Jesus said to them. Why are you frightened? How is it that you have no faith? However, in their fear, they cried out, "Master, do you not care? We are going to perish." The cry of those apostles, "Master, do you not care? We're going to drown," are familiar to us. It's a cry made by many, and probably ourselves, when danger strikes and God seems not even to care or even to be found. At such times, we discover how little our faith really is. But our faith does not have to be perfect. Even a little faith can get us through. Gandhi said, "A person with a grain of faith in God never loses hope because he ever believes in the ultimate triumph of truth." Jesus, just a few weeks ago, told us the same in the parable of the mustard seed. In their grave need, the apostles turned to Jesus for help. Pretty well everybody turns to God in times of extreme danger, but there are some who turn only to God during those times. There's a story about a sea captain who in his retirement used to skipper a boat taking day trippers from the California coast to the island of Catalina. One trip, the boat was full of young people, anxious to hike the trails of the island. They laughed at the old captain when they saw him saying a prayer before setting out, because the day was fine and the sea was calm. However, they weren't long out to sea when a storm did suddenly blow up, and the boat began to pitch violently. The terrified passengers came to the captain and asked him to join them in prayers. But he said in reply, I say my prayers when it is calm. When it is rough, I tend to my ship. In the parishioners of Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, and in that captain, there is a lesson for us. If we cannot or will not see God in the quiet moments of our lives, we're not likely to find him when trouble strikes. Oh, he'll be there. He'll be there all right. But we'll not have the capacity to see him because of our lack of practice in looking for God's presence in our lives every day. So we're more likely to panic. But if we have learned to seek him and to trust him in the quiet moments, then most certainly we will find him when the moments get rough. Life can be compared to a voyage. Though each of us has to pilot our own little craft, the life of a Christian is not meant to be a solo voyage. We journey with our sisters and our brothers in faith, and therefore are able to support one another in times of difficulty. And that's how it should be. That's how we should be church. To have faith in God's presence and trust and support of one another. But we have to be open to it. God is not going to force himself upon us. Yes, the Lord will grant you peace in ways that the world cannot. But we have to be open to that peace. We have to watch for it, look for it, wait for it. It is there. But if we're closed and absorbed in our own lives and accomplishments, it will pass us by. I offer you a little reflection. My faith is tested many times every day, and more times than I'd like to confess. I'm unable to keep the banner of faith aloft if a promise is not kept, or if a secret is betrayed, or if I experience long-lasting pain. I begin to doubt God and God's love for me. I fall into that chasm of disbelief and cry out in despair. But then the Spirit comes and lifts me up again. And once more I am secured in faith. I don't know how that happens. Save when I cry out earnestly, I am immediately heard, and I am returned to faithfulness. I am once again filled with Spirit and planted firmly on solid ground. Not my words, although I wish they were, but the words of the poet Maya Angelou. May the Lord grant you peace in ways that the world would not, and may you be open to it, because if we are not, it will pass us by. Amen.